City Council meeting. Everyone please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
Yes.
And I added it on mine. And
So, I'm not sure what you titled it, Mike, but.
titled it just like you gave it to me. Did you? Here, read mine.
So, item
We have been at.
5G, to say establishing a stream gauging station on Otter Creek at Vergennes. And there's a handout information, and I'll explain more details when we get to that item on the agenda.
Okay. If anyone needs to close, would they please wait until we come to that item on, when we reach that item on the agenda. We don't have any visitors scheduled. I don't know if you ladies have something you would like to offer?
No, I'm just,
Okay. Thank you for coming.
You have names, Joan, of our visitors?
Okay. And look for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the minutes.
October 10th. Lowell makes the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Jeff seconds. Omissions, corrections?
I have some.
Jeff, go ahead.
Page 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 line down. Samantha Dunn reported they just finished doing a survey with residents at the senior housing development on Armory Lane. And then under citizens' comments, about midway down, she asked the city council to encourage, not encouraged. And next page, thank you for the Front Porch Forum posting.
You're welcome.
Local option taxes, midway through the paragraph, he felt it was worth looking at again in his opinion. Mayor Daniels advised he was looking at the city council for guidance. He was looking to the city council for guidance. And that was it.
Had a minor clarify the final paragraph in sewer rate, where it says Alderman Koenig expressed concern that this increase will prove out to be not sufficient for 5 years. Might just be reading easier to say will prove insufficient for 5 years.
I wanted to make sure you were reading it. Good.
Good job on both parts, especially the reading part. I know everybody has a busy schedule. So we have a motion and a second. Any other corrections? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is carried. Does anybody have any questions on the warrants? Or any comments? Mel, anything there you need to explain?
One thing, I can't remember what went out in your packets and what you have here. One of the things I can't remember if the Encore Vergennes Solar was on the one that was sent out to, but that's not a duplicate invoice. What happened is I lost track of Sarah. She's supposed to be sending me invoices, and I lost track of her, she lost track of me, and so that you can see that there is 2 invoices, one covering September and one covering October. I don't have anything else special there.
Any questions of Mel or Joan? Hearing none, we'll move right on to citizens' comments on issues not otherwise on the agenda. And this is at the point or if anybody in the audience has any comments other than what is listed on those papers that we've handed out, it's your time to please speak up. And the gentleman and the young lady, the purpose of your visit tonight?
I'm here, I'm a Boy Scout, and I'm here to earn a badge.
Earn their badge?
Help me get a badge.
Excellent.
And what is your name?
Adam Salisville.
I'm sorry?
We need to make any clarification over the current Front Porch Forum quarterly tax property.
I can certainly report on that under my topics, for sure.
Yes.
There will be a post coming out tomorrow, Mark, but I
Okay.
will certainly talk about that under my topics. Please remind me if I forget.
Okay. Okay, we'll move right into the business section, private sewer lines. There was some questions there about disclosement and whether if it be a conflict of interest. Just like to try to figure out what, I find the subject somewhat confusing.
I thought the minutes were very clear that we'd already done our part in the minutes, and it had nothing to do with our sale, if that's what you're talking about. It was making the council aware that there are private lines that cross other people's property to get to a public sewer line. And I talked to Mel briefly, and I'm not sure we can do anything about it, but I think we should be aware of it, if nothing else. But it's going to be an issue now that it's been brought up once in the city as a title issue. So my point was to make it clear that we do have this issue, and I don't know how it can be addressed and addressed properly. Obviously, we can't take private property rights away from people that own land, but at the same time, someone who has a sewer line that has to be repaired and has to cross someone else's property, and they can't get necessarily an easement from the neighbor and have no way, we were able to go right back out to the street in our particular case. But not everybody, unless Mel knows differently, not everybody's going to be able to take that avenue. So I'm not sure how we're going to address it, but I just think it has to be addressed in some way.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have some solution to this problem, and part of the problem is we really don't know what are in our land records going back to 1791, all right? So we do research, and particularly in the older parts of the city, we are not able to, when sewer lines cross onto somebody else's property, we spend a lot of time and just come up totally empty, and as I mentioned at the last meeting, sometimes we feel like we're looking for something that really doesn't exist. On top of that, you know, there are a number of things recorded in land records, and I was speaking to Jim Wemett about this problem. Now, the ordinance that you have was adopted in 1976. I have no idea whether or not we had any rules or anything prior to that. There is the word sewer in our charter, I think either once or twice, and it makes reference to the city council having the authority to lay out highways and highway streets, sidewalks, sewers. It shows that the city council has that authority to lay those out. It's totally silent about easements. Like I said, when I was speaking to Wemett to see if he could shed some light on it, he does feel that our ordinance, as it defines public sewer, is really not very helpful. Neither of us understand really what that was trying to say, but I continue to feel that it does not mean that the city has some authority to be on somebody's private property dealing with a private person's sewer line. I did run across, I knew about this, that there's an index card in Jones Land Records, index under S for sewer. It says sewer easements, June 1914, recorded in Book 15, page 267. And when you pull that up, it makes reference to a sewer easement. The card says, like I said, the card says sewer easement, New Haven Road to Falls, all right? Book 15, page 267. And when you open up that book and read this easement, it makes reference to a sewer line, makes no reference of where it is. So the clerk must have known that it was from New Haven Road, but it does make reference to a drawing by something in Campbell done in 1914. I have no idea where this map is, but obviously, I do have a map in the vault, it's 2015, but it's not that map. Anyway, it makes reference to a map. It has 25 property owners, so it sounds like all of those property owners at the time signed an easement to the city to lay some line from New Haven Road to the Falls across their property. Now, sure, you could take those 25 names and try to figure out what they owned in 2014, or we could turn City Hall completely upside down. My guess is the map is in the vault somewhere, okay? Somewhere, you know, we could find that, and so we could find where, you know, the easements to those lines, but that still doesn't help the situation of private lines that go over, private lines that go over other people's private property with we haven't been able to find an easement. And I don't want to ever say that that there isn't an easement. I really would prefer to say that we have never found one, because you never know what you could run into. But this does happen on a number of occasions. Jim Omet's current position on this is that the city mains are those that are either in the street right-of-way, or when not within the street right-of-way, where the city has an easement, such as the 2014 easement, and anywhere else where there's been some court decision, some order that condemned that we got an easement by condemnation. I've never run across those. So
You did say that easement was for the city, not for
What's that?
other individuals. A minute ago, you said
Yes.
it was an easement to the city.
That's correct.
By those landowners.
Correct.
Not for,
not to from
Not to-
landowners to
yeah.
landowners, that's correct.
Okay.
So I don't know where we go from here. It's just a reality, and I think, Lynn, that you're right. We're gonna run into this, you know, in the future, no question about it.
So is there any way to amend an ordinance to be more specific to what maybe that original ordinance might have meant? Could it be clarified?
Well, you can amend, yeah, you can amend that ordinance, and get a clearer definition of what that ordinance is, what it was trying to say, but, because that doesn't mean anything right now.
and from what I'm seeing, I don't even know if you put more words in there for clarification, what it's going to really improve upon. It sounds like it's very cut and dry that the public line is the city's line. Anything connecting at that point back to the houses is all private. So therefore, even if it crosses somebody else's property, the city cannot impose, restrict, make modification to any paperwork, cause easement, to make any corrections to a problem. It's the world changing, and we're in a situation where, I don't know, it's like the truck traffic through Vergennes. What is the best answer? We don't have one. And can we do anything? From a legal point, I don't believe we'd have to spend a lot of money, and I think we'd end up losing. Matt, you,
I was wondering, then, in your experience, how are these handled typically between two private property owners? Is it some sort of remuneration from one individual to another?
Well, we were lucky in this position. She was right beside a sewer in the line, so we went right to the road.
Yep.
But in many cases, along Main Street, for instance, where I see them, a lot of the manholes are behind houses. So my concern would be, and it may never happen again, you know, but if just, let's say, somebody's line broke and sewage started to come to the top, and you're not able to get to the closest manhole, what do you do? If the neighbor said, no, you can't come onto my property? What do? You just let the sewage? You can't. It's an impossible situation. And I just thought it's something that we should be aware of. At some point, I hope we can address, because I think that in the future, as our sewer lines are older and things happen to them, that this can be addressed by the council, or, you know, at least be a mediator between parties or something. I don't know.
I would think anything that has a manhole is gonna be part of the public system. I don't think a private line is gonna have a manhole cover. So if there's a manhole, even if it's in somebody's backyard, that's part of the city's sewer. So you should be able to access it there. You might not be able to rip up part of that private line to redo it without permission, but you should be able to get in and do an inspection. Because that's not, you're looking at something with an easement.
Yeah, and I really, you know, I can speculate on what the steps would be. Let's say that somebody had a sewer line that went over somebody else's property, and that somebody else felt that there was no easement, and that property owner had no right, no license, no anything recorded that as evidence that they had that right, that line was rightfully there, all right? But let's say it is boiling out of their backyard, all right? Now, as health officer, I'm gonna order somebody to do something, all right? And I'm gonna order the party who owns the building sewer to make their repair. And if there's a property owner that is not allowing somebody to, allowing anybody on their property to make a repair to a live sewer, I can tell you that as health officer, I would come to the city council and suggest that the city council and the property owner whose sewer needs the repair to go to court and get an order so that permission would be gained to be able to enter the premises, make that effort. You know, if a judge says, no, you can't, well, that's the end of that discussion, but that'd be what I would do.
one of the things that wasn't done in the past and can be done now is if there's something accessible, they do now have pump stations where they can put a pump station in a house and pump it to another closer sewer main. So, I mean, those weren't used in the past, and they are more so now, but it's not a favorable way to go, but.
That sounds like, sorry, Victor, that sounds like this worst-case scenario, we've got to break in this public on someone's lawn, but it sounds like Lynn is trying to go, you know, request guidance on how we could, as a city council, set an ordinance or policy for going forward, that incidents similar to what she brought up 2 weeks ago could be easier to mediate than this current situation was. I don't have the verbiage on that. I wouldn't even know how to draft the verbiage on that.
Did somebody over here have something they wanted to offer?
Well, I wanted to ask about, and you sort of answered it, Lynn, the solution, of course, reconnecting to the sewer in another way. If this should arise again, and I'm assuming we aren't charging a connection fee or anything like that to.
They do need to get a connection permit. But
Permit.
We will not charge $1,340 and treat it as if it's a new connection, no.
Right, okay.
You know, I'll tell you, a lot of these things happen, it's just, I don't want to necessarily say sloppy real estate transactions, but I can't think of a better word. Let me give you an example. The Park Restaurant, all right, a lot of people don't realize it, but when you next time you walk into the Park Squeeze, the Park Squeeze actually consists of a front wall and a back wall. The walls on the side, one wall is Ryan's and the other wall is whoever owns that building now, all right? Where Megan is. Anyway, my point is that prior to 1910, that was actually an alley, all right? And the sewer line from the Franklin block actually ran south underneath that building. And so the Franklin family built the front wall and the back wall, all right, and eventually sold the restaurant, but the sewer line ran right through the basement of the building. No reference in a deed, no reserve the rights of a sewer line. So like the Ryan block ended up having a sewer line that actually ran through the Park Squeeze's basement, all right? This is just an example of, kind of sloppy conveyances that they aren't taking into account. Now in this day and age, I think that would have been discovered, are all of the easements necessary, whatever. And so I think certainly going forward, things are being done better, but there's a pretty serious mess, behind us here. Particularly because, somebody asked me like, when did sewer get put in, I have no idea. I mean, I know we didn't have wastewater treatment until 1964, but we had system of pipes in this town going back to, 1820, 1830.
And they used to
Right?
dump right in the river.
Yeah, so, we really don't have a good history of all of these lines. And trying to piece together who owned what when, there's lots of land transfers in, transfers out, that it might appear as if the easement wasn't included in the transfer, but it actually was there before because the owner used to own the property, and when they sold it, they didn't reserve that easement. I mean, it's like sometimes, I'll give you an example. This isn't a secret. Mr. and Mrs. Esty on Green Street, when they sold a piece of land to the Burlocks, their own sewer line went across the corner of the Burlock property. And there's nothing in the Burlock deed that makes reference to reserving a right-of-way over the Burlock property, all right? Now, Sheila knows about that, and she understands it, but you can see how people didn't, it's not like they had a detector that you could, at that time, where you could send it down the line and scope out where it goes. It just, everybody's doing everything from memory, and then you find these things out after the fact.
So will part of our mapping project indicate where connections are?
No. That's we do, it's not like we don't have don't have any information on connections, because like, for instance, in 1978, 79, when there was a major project that occurred, it wasn't just the treatment plant, 78, 79, there was miles and miles of lines replaced. Those lines, we have connection information. I have a book in my office that you can go to sheet 3, and you can get down to 12 School Street and find exactly, you can find exactly where that connection is. The problem is we don't have all of them.
So is it 50%, 60% that we know?
It's somewhere in there, yeah.
So what you're basically saying is there's probably no way to address this except on an individual basis from now till eternity. And when you're gone and nobody knows that there's a pipe underneath the Park Squeeze and I'm gone and
Well,
Michael's
you
gone.
are going to have much better mapping here, let me just tell you that. You're going to have a much better mapping of the city system, all right? But this effort is not going to give you a map of everyone's connection. That would be another project, that, somebody, would have to undertake, which would not, that's not an afternoon's work.
No, I understand.
I'm sure with all the inspections that they require nowadays with any transfer of land, more of those will come out. We found one on, they found one on McDonough Drive that a guy built a garage. He built it right over the top of a sewer line.
Sure, yeah, happens all the time.
So, didn't know it at the time. Otherwise, probably something, things have changed. So, we're getting better at what we're doing. So, unfortunately, this is one I don't think we can go back in time and change.
One of the things, when the sewer ordinance, it was adopted in 1976, all right? So that in and of itself tells you that, I think the reason, in my mind, I talked about this 1978 project. Just before the 78 project was when the city installed the pump station at Northlands Job Corps and the pump station that serves the Otter Creek Park, all right? And those pump stations were done, and I think they were designed in 74 and built in 76. It was at that time it was discovered, there's federal money going on in here, and one of the requirements is you have to have a sewer use ordinance to control, manage flow coming into your system, all right? And so in 1976, I'm sure that it was Du Bois and King, put together this model sewer ordinance for the city, and the city council adopted that. It's a duly adopted ordinance, all right? Now, obviously, here we are, 2017, might be a good idea to take a peek at that, see what else needs clarified. That's certainly one thing that needs to be clarified. Maybe some of the other parameters as to what we allow. For instance, we talk about wipes and all this type of thing. I think if you read through that ordinance, I doubt that it'll be very specific to those kinds of products. That's an example of something that should be clearly set forth in the ordinance.
And it's something that needs to get done because we have sump pumps, we have
Yep.
roof drains, and all those things are what are causing some of our heartburn and headache. And so
Yeah.
that.
I spent a little time on the league's website just to see if they had a model sewer ordinance, and I'm not saying they don't have it, like I said, I spent a little time, right? But there are ordinances certainly out there that we could go to, but that should be on our list of things to do for sure.
So not wanting to let issues die in a corner, anybody got any ideas on what could happen? Or just, we need to let this slide off into a corner? I mean, I don't see a solution, but Mel says, an update. Is
Well,
that something?
I can assure you that anybody who's watching this tonight, is they're gonna say, I wonder where my sewer line goes. So that'll be Joan's first call, in 2 days. Do you know where my sewer line connects? And we'll be doing that, we'll be answering all those questions. I'm a little, should we map everything? Well, that's a huge endeavor. They really should have, all of that should have been mapped. I mean, we're running I can tell you, if Green Mountain Power certainly knows where every wire goes into your house, all right? We're sitting here saying, we got 50 or 60% of the information. That's not a very,
I can tell you where my sewer line goes. I had it replaced, so I wrote down reference points.
yeah.
So I know that at the street, the line is 9.6 inches, or 9.6 inches, 9 feet, 6 inches down from the top of the road, tire part, and that's like in
Yeah.
so many feet off a corner of a piece of cement. It's like, that's where you're gonna find it.
I kind of wonder, Lynn, really how big of a project, it'd be good to get this base map. We do have a lot of information. It's like and it is important that these things get out of my head, get out of Jimmy Laro's head. Carol O'Connor, I can tell you every so often, Jim Laro calls Carol O'Connor, okay? So that's how, it works, but that's not really the way that we should be leaving the next generation.
Information, we have a new sewer connection now for this particular, is that written down? So we have one more connection that we know about?
Yes.
So it's now 50.2%
Yeah,
that
let
we
me tell you
have?
something, I'll tell you something, that sewer connections, all right? We've been doing sewer connections since the form, right? Since 1976. I think we got it, don't we have a gap of, we don't know where they are? Is that-
Well, the boxed up, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
so all of those connections really, I don't want to say they shouldn't be boxed up, but if that sewer application had a good map attached to it, all right, and that's not necessarily going to be the case, those things are important. It's not about the $1,340. The diagram is as much or more important than the money. So we should, Joan, I think, I mean, you're not gonna be here forever either, okay?
No,
So,
I'm thinking today, we just need to scan every one of those and record them in the land records, the ones
that
we
is-
have
yeah,
in
they
our
changed- They
possession.
changed the law a few years ago that every permit, that a municipal permit
Well,
is to be
zoning,
recorded in
yeah.
the, municipal permits. It says municipal permits, and it isn't just zoning, it's all municipal permits. So all zoning permits that are issued, all decisions of the DRB are recorded in the land records, all right? All of our sewer connection permits, those should have been, all right?
Put
And
in
like I
there.
say, what Joan's saying, okay, let's just bite the bullet,
Take the
package them all
file,
up, all
yeah.
right? And, yeah,
File 'em.
they're received for record, 27 years late, but at
Here
least
they
they're
are.
in, and that way, a property owner doing a title search can find that connection permit, and we're done. It's a project, but that's not a terrible.
No, but
project,
it
it's-
will
it's-
help towards going into the future, you know,
But
and,
is that something that the clerk and assistant clerk would do? or is-
Absolutely.
Oh, they
Yeah.
would?
Yes.
Okay.
That's just recording, basically, they gotta get a parcel number, I mean, there's a little work involved with doing that. Yeah. Well, not in 1977 they aren't, but, yeah.
Kevin?
I just make a suggestion, you guys create a side committee or something to look at. It sounds like it's a bigger issue than trying to discuss in one meeting.
It is, and what I'm, just made a little bit of a note here, I'm gonna talk to Mel and see if we need to bring somebody else in on this to actually, like they did do Boise King, and, look at the ordinance, or, so, I'm gonna have some side actions, side discussion on this, so, because we're not gonna resolve it tonight. We've kind of beat this one into the bush. Any other comments on anything about relating this? Hearing none, nothing. We're gonna move on to item number B, local option tax. And again, we aren't gonna resolve it, because we can't, because it's gotta go to a voter if we go there. But Mel reached out to the state and was able to get a lot of good information on what impact it could have. I don't know how many had a chance to really read through every page.
So included in your packet is the first, I'll try to keep mine in order, the same order as you. A few years ago, in 2014, when we looked into this, my contact person was Jeffrey Dooley, and he supplied similar information to us. And I reached out to him and weaved my way to a new contact person whose name is Rebecca Samaroff. And so she was able to put together new information. I think back in 2014, I'm surprised the numbers are really are so different, to be honest with you, because our recollection is that in 2014, the gross numbers of the three taxes were about $140,000, and you multiply that, getting 70% of that money, the city would get about $100,000. Well, since 2014, that $140,000 has turned into $231,671. So it's almost, when I see a number that is that big, way beyond cost of living increases, there's something funny about that. But anyway, that's the number. So if you take the 231,671 multiplied times the 70%, it equals $176,566. So, if this was something that you moved forward with, went to the voters approved it, went to the legislature approved your language, I could lay out a schedule of this, but let's just talk about on an annualized basis, not get wrapped up into this quarter and second quarter, third quarter, but on an annualized basis, based on those numbers, if all three of those local option tax sources were approved by voters and put in place, that's the annualized number. So that's that information. I also simply copied, I skipped around here.
While he's looking, there's another thing I want to bring up, is the fact that there's three options here. You can pick one. You don't have, you can pick only one if you want.
But you can't do all three.
You can do all three.
Any combination
Any
thereof.
combination thereof, you can do. So I
And I
personally.
think, Mark, at the last meeting, you wondered about, can you do a half, or can you do one, or there was a question you had about that, and I have, it's one, that's the deal. I gave to you three different charter sections, applicable charter sections, one from Colchester, one from Middlebury, and one from South Burlington. And the only reason why I chose those three is for you to be able to see the different ways that these towns handle the use of those funds. As you can see, some of them, like in the case of Middlebury, I can tell you it's a little bit hard to follow because you need to have the rest of the information. But Middlebury, it says that their money goes into a pilot, and in this instance, pilot stands for payment in lieu of taxes, which is actually a fund that money was supplied from Middlebury College into this pilot, and then the money from these taxes go into that same pilot, and it's used to pay for the bridge bond. And I think you've read some things about that. In the case of Colchester, you can see how their money goes into a reserve fund, but any expenses from that fund has to go back before the voters again. That's how theirs is done. And in the case of South Burlington, you can see how they've got a number of little buckets here. One bucket to do this for reserve fund, something else for municipal property tax subsidy. I also gave you Dawn Francis, who I've known for a long time. She's currently the town manager in Colchester. She used to be the assistant manager in Essex. She lives just up the road in Heinsberg, so she's a golfing buddy of mine. And anyway, so I reached out to Dawn because I knew that that Colchester was really one of the latest, if not the latest town to go in this route. And so Dawn supplied me with, when I say internal information, it's all public information that went to the select board, went to the public. They also had PowerPoint presentations that they made throughout their town. So this was their approach to be able to sell this to their voters, and it did get approved, and I think that they're collecting money. The way they're set up, I think they started collecting money in October. I didn't get into their particular cash flow, so.
As Mel has described, there's many different ways you can try to use this money. We design a program. A few options that I would like to think about or have people consider is they passed the downtown basin master plan. There's a bunch of different things that need to be implemented. Those items need money to implement. Right now, there's no funding source for that. So either we end up looking at tax dollars at budget time to see how those are funded and how we can start moving on those. There were, I think it was 1 or 2 year and then 5-year plan and 10-year plans. And so we need to kind of we're getting at that point in life where we need to start putting some stuff in place. Kevin, you had your hand up.
So how much are we talking about? Is there an estimate?
On
Master-
any of the
master plan?
projects?
The master plan?
No, there is, to my knowledge, there isn't one. Rennie and I are going to get the steering committee back together to find out about implementation and then start working some of those questions as to, funding and, what it's gonna cost.
So, we don't know how much, you said there's no funds available.
There's none planned. There's none
There are
planned.
reserve funds out there, right?
There's
City
nothing
has.
planned. There might be grants available. There might be grants available for some of this, but none of this has even been started, so we gotta try to get that whole thing organized.
No, my concern is, as soon as you say option tax, all the businesses in town freak out, and including the big ones. And so, I guess it almost seems like you're putting the cart before the horse. If you say you wanna spend some money in the basin, find out how much that is, and just looking at last year's audited financials, there's reserve funds that have money in them. I don't know if they're all spent now, but, you got a water tower fund with $226,000, the co-op GMP basin fund with 10 grand in it. You got a watershed fund that you can pull money from off on an interest basis. There is money that's available. I'm assuming that didn't get all spent in 1 year. So, if you can find out how much you're looking for and compare it to what you got and use that for matching, for grants, you could probably get quite a bit of money without having to go to an options tax.
We have to maintain a certain amount of the water tower fund there, and so we're limiting how much we can draw off that. Same with the watershed fund. With the pool age and some of the projects that need to be done, it has taxed that pool money. We bumped it up $2,000 this year, and we were able to do something else. We're going to talk a little bit about that on another action item here. And so I'm not going to get into detail about that because I know Mel has some points he wants to make, but
So Kevin,
yes.
are you suggesting that the city council exhaust all of those reserve funds before they ever look at a local option tax?
No. But I think you should look at what you have first and see if it could be used to leverage and get, matching funds. Say it's like, I don't know, $70,000 you gotta spend down there. Take 35 to get matching. Do you have access to 35,000 in your reserve fund?
Yeah, so anyway, that's what we do all the time with the water
Right.
tower fund. That's not new news. I mean, like
Right.
the rectangular traffic, the pedestrian traffic signals, that $37,500 grant had to be matched. It was a 50% grant. City council allocated $37,500 from the water tower fund. So even though when you pull up the audit from FY15 or whatever you're looking at, there are, the auditors don't, they don't encumber it. It's kind of strange. They, like for instance, when the city council says, okay, we're gonna allocate X amount of dollars towards some grant application, the auditors, they don't encumber the fund, all right? We know that it's encumbered because I have a spreadsheet that keeps track of encumbrances, but there's no question, it is not like it's all encumbered. It's not. And there's money that comes in every month.
No, I'm aware of all that, and my understanding is the water tower fund is only restricted by policy, right?
The water tower fund is only restricted, well, it's restricted by policy, but it is a voter-approved reserve fund, but unlike the watershed fund, whereby the watershed fund is protected in that the $350,000 base can't be spent, only the earnings on that $350,000. The water tower fund, on the other hand, and there is a continuation fund because only 75% is made available to projects approved by the city council, but there is no, it's not like the watershed where there's this reserve of $200,000 that can't be spent, or like the Ray Davison fund where that $198,000 can't be spent. So no, it can be liquidated.
No, good idea, Kevin. It's just, we're in the early stages of start having some discussion. There's many different roads in the past you can go down to get there, and we'll take that into consideration. But I made a note, Rennie and I need to try to get a date set to, he and I are gonna meet with the steering committee to look at that, to find out about the implementation and then some of the costs associated with those projects. So it's all active.
This is at least a two-step process, correct? We would need to go to the state legislature. The voters have to approve to get the, okay, so voters to ask whether or not they want to have the charter change.
Yep.
That goes to the state.
If approved.
They can say yes or no.
Yeah.
It's probably gonna say yes, but the
Legislature.
legislature could
Yeah.
say no.
Yeah.
And then it comes back, and the charter is now saying, if a resolution is passed or a petition is passed, then the voters can vote on whether to actually implement what this charter change has granted us the power to do. There still has to be voter approval for actually taxing.
That has to be
There's gonna be,
first.
you have to have
That's
the
the first
voters,
step,
the
yes.
voters have to say, we want a charter change.
Well, the first step is a city council. That's the first step is the city council decides whether or not they're gonna put an article in front of the voters. That's the first step. I will tell you that the voters
What
could
I mean is-
petition to create that.
The voters have to say twice before they're gonna get taxed. They have to
Once.
say, well, so the charter, by asking for the charter change, automatically implements the tax?
So like if you take in the answer I'm gonna say is yes, there's no, you don't go back to the voters again, all right? Just look at Colchester's charter.
I mean, A seems to me that you have to go back to the voter then. Once this charter change is in place, now if there's a resolution by the select board or a petition by 5% of the voters, then there's a vote to assess any or all of the following.
So if you go to
I think what you're
Colchester's,
looking at,
I'm looking at the-
is where they, no, I think what he's looking at is where the voters approve what the projects are they're gonna be expended, the money's gonna go against. And I would hope that, because of the way this council has operated in the past, that we wouldn't set that up in that manner. There'd be some sort of a committee that would set priorities on what projects would get done, in what order. So that's what we have always operated like before, is, we make the decisions on, paving and other safety and other items. And I would hate to see us give up that at this point. But it could go that way.
so you're thinking the case of Colchester where under says, where the shall attend a culture, the select board moves to approve the following language to be included in the March 2015 town meeting warning to be voted on by Australian ballot, okay? That's the charter question. And then it says draft proposed charter language to be placed in voter booths is down below. I don't think that there was another vote.
This looks like there is, though. So you're looking at motion one, motion two here?
Yep, yep.
What line are you looking at, Mark? Are you you're looking under section 703, local sales tax, rooms, meals?
I was looking at the actual charter.
Because I think when the charter, once the charter is voted on, okay, once the charter is voted on, goes to the legislature, that charter is put in place, all right, and then it says,
That's the town.
it
He's looking at-
says that upon resolution of the select board,
Right. at an annual meeting or specially warned for the purpose by a majority of those present and voting, the voters of the town may vote to assess.
Okay, and
So-
I know it sounds a little backwards, but basically what that charter change did was bless that prior action.
But I don't think you have to. That's why so the motion, the language is saying at the very end of that, the warning says pending approval of the change by legislature. So they kind of did 2 for 1.
Yeah,
So you don't, that would tell me that you don't have to go to the voters to ask for the charter change.
legislature can change your charter without any voters, but what are you thinking?
Start again. We're considering changing, in order to do the option tax, you need to
You
change
need
the charter.
enabling legislation in your charter. You need
In
language
order
in
to
your
have
charter.
that happen, the legislature has to say yes or no.
Yes.
In order to ask that question, do we just ask the legislature as a council, or do the voters have to say, we would like to have the charter changed to allow the possibility of an option
Okay,
tax?
the voters first, because it's actually a proposed charter change, all right? You are proposing a charter change, and once it's approved, it goes to the legislature.
So they're actually, the language that Colchester put together, I think is 2 questions in 1,
Yes, it is.
which probably shouldn't happen. But, so they're asking, we would like to change the charter, and at the same time, if the charter gets changed, we would like to implement this tax.
That's right.
But you could do those separately.
Absolutely. You
That's
could
what I'm-
seek
So you
authority
still really
from
need
the
to have
voters.
the voters have
to-
to answer yes to 2 different things.
So you could get seek approval from the voters to seek authority to have a local option tax that would be instituted upon a successful future vote. And separate those 2, yes, you
Right.
could.
So I think that might be,
Just as, like, let's say that down the road, you want to do away with your local option tax. You go to the voters, and the voters do away with it. Your charter is still there. You didn't change your charter, that stays in place. So conceivably, you could toggle in, toggle out of local option taxes. Let's say that they were used for a very specific purpose, to pay a bond on an X.
turn it off for 3 years, turn it off for a decade. It's
That's
still
right,
there. You can turn it on if
absolutely.
you need to.
Absolutely.
That would be my suggestion, is we're even considering this, to deal with that first. Are the voters even interested in considering the idea? They would still need to
Then we wouldn't have to go
approve.
back to you get the legislative side off the done.
Yes.
Done. Yep.
The charter's just there, and then in the future, we've already got that off. Now we can talk.
So
But
we
the
would-
voters still have to agree to the option tax being turned
Absolutely.
on.
By splitting it up.
It's
Yeah,
not just
absolutely.
us saying, okay, we've
Yeah.
got the power now, let's just
Right,
tax everything.
Right.
So we wouldn't have to go to the voters first?
Yes, you
We would
still
have
have to
to
go to
go.
the voters first, yeah,
But turning it off, turn it off, we can turn it on and off, we can turn it off.
right. So
Right,
let's
right,
let's just, conceivably, if you were seeking to just have that authority in your charter, which actually really, it isn't about with the city council having authority, it's the voters
City
giving
being-
themselves the
right.
authority. So conceivably, in March, you could have this question, all right? No resolution to institute it, it's just purely getting it in your charter. Go to the legislature blesses it in the charter, now it's there. Next March, or in March of 2019, if you wanted to institute that, or earlier or later, you then, you have a vote to your people to institute it for a particular purpose, ranging from a project or just subsidize the property tax rate. Go to the voters, and you don't have to go to legislature again, because that's already behind you.
Right.
Okay, to keep things moving, we've had some good discussion. Let's give it some thought until our next meeting, bring this back to the table and figure out what is our next move. So this gives you a chance to look at the paperwork that's been presented, maybe even have some discussion with some of our locals and see what some of their thoughts are, and bring some verbiage back to the table, and get some guidance as to, you know, and at some point, I would actually like to do a Cracker Barrel with the local merchants, just to get some feeling, but I would, you know, like to get yea or nay if the council thinks that would be a good idea, just so that we can have some input from them, so. So,
I think there ought to be direct outreach either from the partnership, Mike, or the steering committee directly to our business owners.
okay, no, that's a good idea. I think I'll talk to Mr. Rennie about that as well. And I'm sure the partnership would want to be part of that discussion. They have a resource of contact information, and we could figure out what is the best time to do that, an evening or whatever, or Saturday, whatever. So I'll get with Rennie and start some stuff going and try to bring back some more information
No, thank you.
for the next meeting. But to, again, keep things going. And anybody that's in the audience, Andy, you came late. Jelly, gumdrops, just pass them around. I think Jeff looks like he's down one or two, but step up, grab.
Yeah, if you can persuade soccer teams not to play double overtime games and go to penalty kicks, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
In the dark.
Yep. So.
It's still light enough to have penalty kicks.
Yep. Okay, we're gonna jump right on to item number C, easement for a rail trail project.
I just wanted to bring this to your attention. I think,
Where is the property? That's
where is the property? So, rail trail. Where is the rail trail? Well, if I brought my 1858 map, you would, a lot of people, there's probably people out there that still don't realize, but there actually used to be a spur off from the railroad track, a little bit north of where Velco is currently located. There actually used to be a spur that ran from that location all the way and down to the basin and across the basin to where the wastewater treatment plant is located today. You know, my guess is it got installed, and then when the next rain showed, it went to Fort Casson. So anyway, that rail trail, if you will, still, the railroad bed is still somewhat in place. And back, I got done working for the city back in 1998, and somewhere between 1998 and 2003, there was an idea of creating a so-called rail trail to be able to for pedestrians to get from the McDonough Drive area out to and behind Velco and possibly connect into where the train station is located today. During that time, there was easements that needed to be obtained, and there actually already is an easement over the Paquette property because it was reserved through some council. It's not like a Paquette to City of Vergennes or whatever. It's a conservation easement against the property for the benefit of the public. So it's not conveyed to the city, but there is this public right-of-way through there. And either Randy Friday or Rennie, if Rennie was here, he could shed a little bit of light on this, but there was easements. There was 3 other parties involved in getting easements, one being Bruce and Debbie Bushy, who still currently own a lot at the foot of Comfort Hill. The rail trail would then cross over property of Kathleen Rivers, and I've copied Kathleen's easement in your packet. And then the land in the valley and to the north of Velco are owned by J.P. Carrera and Sons or affiliate corporations. And it's my understanding that Bruce and Debbie had agreed to sign an easement, but I don't know if that easement got drafted. I just know that it's not signed. Kathleen, I'll get back to Kathleen in a second, her easement is in your packet. And the Carreras, as I understand it, did not want to sign an easement at that time because they were in the midst of negotiations with Velco, and they just didn't want to confuse those negotiations. That's where Velco purchased the property from a Carrera affiliate. Anyway, you will notice in Kathleen's easement that it says that this easement shall revert unless the city is to build this thing by July 1st, 2008. Obviously, that didn't occur, but this easement still sits here, all right? So I really feel that the city needs to make a decision about this project. Either you're doing it or you're not doing it. And if you're not doing it, then at a minimum, we should consider creating some form of document that clearly extinguishes that easement off from her property. Or if you're gonna do the project, then we should be letting people know that we're gonna do it. And Kathleen did tell me that she would be open to a new easement, but only on a real project. Because I think that she really felt that when she signed this, that it was gonna be done. Now that 9 years has passed and it hasn't, and really she has a cloud on her deed. So I need some direction from the council as to, I don't know that I need a decision tonight, but I am looking for some guidance as to whether or not this is a real project or not. Obviously, if it's not, then we ought to instruct the city attorney to create a document and take that cloud. If it is on the table, then we should be moving forward accordingly.
Do we have a number to associate with this? How much the rail trail is going to cost?
Well, it depends, all right? If you're just talking about easements, and I think there's even there's some issues out there.
Ravine that's got to get crossed.
Yeah,
And there's many ways to.
I thought
try
there
to
were
get
three
that done.
different bridges on this.
there very well could be, all right? So that, if this was a project like hiking up Buck Mountain or hiking up Snake Mountain, okay, that's just a path that you walk on, all right? However, if you're looking at a project and using federal money, all right, you're talking about a 5-foot wide paved, so the dollar figure, I don't know that I've ever seen any calculation, Lynn, but, the number, I hate to answer your question with, well, it depends, all right? But the answer is it depends. If you want to build this rail trail using federal money, then you got to build it to federal standards, and this project is, $1 million. Okay, I'm just saying it could very easily be, when you got bridges and this type of thing to do it, it could be that much money. And, so like I say, I think that a decision has to be made is, really, is this a project that the community is chomping at the bit for? I mean, is this a priority in the community?
Well, when they had the charrettes and all the different things going on at the Opera House, one of the things was to give our people more space to walk, and the rail trail was an item on that. I think it's just been dying, this has been dying a slow, natural death, unfortunately, because it hasn't been made a priority. I would like to see something done. Do we need to build it to federal standards to start out with? Can we, what was some kids came in and laid paper down and hauled wheelbarrow after wheelbarrow of stone out there.
Wasn't during my time, so I don't
No.
have any knowledge of this.
Rennie or Randy Friday, and I think it was Rennie, could tell you a little bit more about it. So,
Rennie has all the details
Yeah.
on the rail trail.
so, and there was one time, in my previous mayor tenure, There was a gentleman that was going to research the easements, and then he moved out of the city, so that kind of died by the wayside. But, I don't know. What's the council's thought? Jeff?
How does this terminate on the north end? Does it run right into the railroad tracks, or, like, how are you gonna transition over the tracks as we're gonna increase rail trail capacity going forward?
No idea.
Is there any,
The
just,
intent-
is there any way to tie it in to the crosswalk that'll be put in at the police station?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It was going to come in near the ravine,
Yep,
and then go along the northern side of the 22A.
Yep.
And then made up to some of the sidewalks at the train station. The,
So you're thinking,
Guardrails.
could it be a loop as opposed to a
Yeah.
Right.
destination?
correct.
Yeah.
I mean,
Just KR crossing, I'm just not sure how you're gonna bring pedestrian
I
traffic
agree
through
with
there.
I don't think we're a Stowe or a Waterbury, but I've been on both their trails, and you get a lot of people that come, ride their bikes, and will just come for part of a day, and I think it has other benefits for the economics of Vergennes. Kevin?
Well, wasn't there also a study done to make it like a circumferential loop bike path, and this is just part of that?
Yes.
So, I mean, my understanding, and I never actually got to see it, but there's, you know, a binder, a booklet, or a study
Yep.
done with a map that draws this all out. And money was spent to study it and see if it would be possible. You know, whenever we mention it in any kind of meetings, people get all excited about it, so I'd be worried about shutting it down by, I mean, I don't even know how this came up as to whether this easement needs to go away or not, but, you know, I'd be worried about making a rash decisions to just, you know, well, if nothing's been done, so let's just get rid of that opportunity.
One of the
Again,
issues-
you know, having a discussion in a meeting here, or maybe having a committee that formed to get all the information, put it all together, and come back to the council with all the questions you guys have asked me, that's something that could be done. It's just, like you said, is it a priority over, you know, other things going on, trying to fill vacant spaces, is it a priority over, you know, whatever else is going on in town? So now there's a rail, you know, there's a rail station out there, Amtrak's coming to town, they say in a year or two. They're gonna be doing improvements out there in a year, they say next year that should be all ready to go for a potential tenant out there. And, you know, I just think the council should consider the future, and not, you know, this one particular easement as governing whether you say yes or no to it. And also take a look at this bigger picture study that was done that you know, I think incorporates going all the way out to like where the Legion is and coming back around across towards the schools and wrapping back into the city. So you can do a whole loop around Vergennes, not just that one section that, you know, gets you out to the rail trail. So, I mean, to
One of the
the,
binding points is crossing the railroad tracks on Route 7. That was one of the hangups. They couldn't figure out how they're gonna try to manage that crossing, because they don't want people walking across the tracks. They don't want to give any right-of-ways.
If I remember correctly, there was also an issue of just how to get past the woods between 22A and the Legion 2. Is that right, Mel? Wasn't there some costs associated with that?
I can tell you I know the study that you're talking about, and I hate to keep saying, I didn't work here from 1998 to 2008, so I don't have knowledge. I know where the study is. It's about that thick. I've seen the drawing. There's probably a cost estimate in there, you know, whatever the number is.
It
You know,
wasn't cheap to get from 22A
yeah, you know, so, I mean, it's
to Mountain
a
Road.
study. I
That
think
was the
I've
problem.
mentioned to the council before, you know, can we stop doing studies? And, you know, let's not stack up another study. Let's pull the studies that we've done and figure out which ones are the top priority and start doing them, all right? And that one, because really, it was, you know, when I came back to work here, you know, that's, I don't know the date that it was, but I have it, you know, in a credenza in my office.
just for discussion purposes for our next meeting, would it be possible to dust that map off?
Sure.
So that we have a better understanding as to.
What that route
the
was,
area
what it
we're
was
looking
doing.
at.
I can
Sure.
drop you my
So-
copy. Joe gave me his
All
before
right.
he
Did he?
left.
Take this.
Yep, Ernie will be here. Yep.
Yeah.
So, if nobody else has any critical points they want to make at this point, we'll move right along
Right,
to,
and so I want to tell Kathleen, you know, that we're talking about the project
Yeah.
again, just so that she knows.
okay, appreciate that. And I wondered about the Bluesies. I know there's some things going on, but let me just give Bruce a call and find out if there's some other activities still happening, and so that I kind of get some directions on if that's becomes a area that we aren't allowed to cross. Swimming pool.
So there's three things in front of you. One is I thought I would put together, again, the current swimming pool budget for the 2017 season. And first off, just so that you know why some of those boxes are yellow, and that's because on the revenue side, that $2,075 includes an anticipated $2,000 coming from the Fishman family. The $11,000 that's in yellow is because Joan hasn't, I'm not faulting Joan, but Joan hasn't transferred the money from the watershed fund to that, and the reason why she hasn't is because we don't bust CDs just to transfer money. We will wait for that cash to build up, and when Joan's got $11,000 in cash, she'll make that switch. And down under expenses, you'll notice that the workers' compensation, property insurance, and general liability, those lines are yellow, and that's because we pay insurance on a quarterly basis, and so there'll be another payment due sometime in January. The telephone bill of $35 a month comes in regardless of whether or not the phone is on or off. And then maintenance or repair, you can see that we've spent $4,025 during the season on maintenance and repair. But the good news is that number in the bottom right-hand corner shows that the swimming pool has a current fund balance of $14,844.66 today. So what I've also got in front of you are quotes from NICOM Coatings, which is NICOM Coatings, and also from P's, I've lost my sheet here, from P's Specialty Contracting. And so I will, when it's the appropriate time here, recommend that we contract with NICOM for both the caulking of the joint around the pool and the entire pool apron. $1,360 for the caulking around the pool, plus $2,520 for the other caulking, for a total of $3,880. So I'm going to recommend that we proceed with that. And I certainly, Michael and I have had just a little bit of discussion. Not that I love seeing a maintenance and repair budget, be overspent by $4,000. I don't see any need to tap into any of our reserve funds. I really think this is a maintenance and repair item. Periodically, we're going to have to redo the caulking at the pool. It's not a capital expense. It's something that we do. So I'm going to recommend that the city council authorize/acknowledge the hiring of NICOM Coatings for the caulking and deck repair to come out of the swimming pool budget.
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion, do I have a second? Got those, Joan? Further discussion?
The only question I would want to have you ask Nikon, so I'm looking at the product specs, and it says in limitations, avoid exposure to high levels of chlorine. I don't know what high levels, it says maximum 5 parts per million. I don't know what that means in the way of pool water, but it might be nice to verify either with Rick that that's not anywhere near what pool water is, or that they're fine with that, but I'd hate to put this stuff in and then find out, oh, you know what?
Well, one of the things, if you notice on the deco seal, you know, it says it is ideal for sealing joints on swimming pool decks. So I don't know if that was the one you're referring to.
No, it's the very
So-
last page under
Okay,
the
so under the
Sikaflex 2.
Sikaflex 2C.
Yeah, right in the middle of limitations. And I just don't know what pool water is. I don't know if 5 parts per million is like way over what we'd ever put into pools, but just as a clarification, Rick would probably know
He would
faster
know
than-
that right off the,
Yeah,
you know.
if he says, no, we're
the
talking-
Maximum level is 5 parts per million. So I'll ask Rick,
I suspect it's fine. It just
Yeah.
caught my eye that chlorine and pool seem like they usually go together.
yeah.
Okay, any other discussion?
I will tell you that if you look at the PC specialty, not the dismantle, you'll notice that they proposed the Sika 2C as well, all right? So they're both speccing the same product for that job, so that makes me feel good, but, yeah. Yeah,
Just
yeah.
to verify.
Well, we certainly use chlorine.
Yep.
And hopefully just enough. That's the game.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So carried. Just to let you know, Mel and I had some further discussion on some of the other funds. Rick is working on some filters. Filter covers, and we wanted to see what the damage cost was on those things before we started making recommendations. But after the dust settles here a little bit, we gotta also put in a hot water tank, and so we gotta get an estimate on what that's gonna cost. And we're not, no, it doesn't make sense to put it in now, we'll do it in the spring, but hopefully the council will authorize money that's left over, and then we'll start looking at the punch list and priority list that the advisory committee kicked out for us, and see if there's some other items that we can start doing, hopefully before the pool opens next year. So, alrighty. Item number E, nuisance, hazard structure.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
I
sir.
actually asked Mel for some guidance on this, and by way of disclosure, I probably am associated with at least one property in Vergennes that would fall under this category.
Okay. And yeah, I'm aware that, because I saw the emails floating back and forth, but can you add some clarification on what you're looking for here?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So via social media, I was contacted by a member of our community that there was a conversation taking place regarding 2 properties on the other side of the bridge, on 22A on Main Street, and that their perception was that they were falling into disrepair. They were, at one point, great properties for our community, for the city, and they were referencing an ordinance in Burlington that gave city council some teeth to kind of move these projects along, either by way of getting them repaired or by getting them removed. So I, based on the conversation, had just reached out to Mel for, did we have any existing ordinances, or should we be considering an ordinance that would allow the city council to encourage, these properties are, they're paying taxes, they're just not being kept up. So that was kind of where this started.
We had, I know of probably one that you're talking about, and we've had some different conversations with an individual about trying to get one of the properties to make it a respite house, or other, where we could get some federal money to do some great projects and have a great place for people to go and live. But that fell several years ago by the wayside. The gentleman will not sell. He has plans, so he says, but we don't know. So, Mel, any comments?
So this ordinance, I don't know that this ordinance has ever been tested to my knowledge, and I also don't know whether or not it's kind of typical type ordinances, an ordinance that municipalities have or not, all right? But I would like everyone to read this ordinance in two different ways, all right? So one way that I'd like you to read this, and I think what I'm about to explain, I'm not saying that it's one way or the other, because I think that this ordinance can be interpreted to work in either case. Case number one, let's say if you had a piece of property in town, let's call it a multiple family dwelling, fully tenanted, all right? None of the sewers work, water lines were busting, garbage all over the place, people are all living in there, all right? We would use this ordinance, or I would use this ordinance as the city health officer, you know, we're saying any building, structure, accumulation of waste or rubbish which in the opinion of the health officer is unwholesome or hazardous to safety of life, health, or morals upon investigation be declared condemned and unfit for habitation. So basically, I'm attempting to use my authority to force the owner to fix things to make it habitable, or get the people out of there because it's unfit, all right? So you can use this ordinance to, force somebody to fix sewer in an apartment that's not working and the tenants don't care, all right? So that's that part. The question I have would be, can this ordinance also be used for a property that is not occupied? I've never condemned it, all right? And some of the properties that are on people's minds, they aren't, nobody's living in them, all right? But they probably should be condemned regardless of whether or not there's people living in them, because you certainly wouldn't want suddenly somebody showing up and living there, all right? Because they aren't really fit for habitation, so that you could use this ordinance to condemn it. And then when the ordinance goes on and you start ordering somebody to do something, that's when you get your lawyer out and then we're gonna end up in court. And we've actually been there before, back in the, I wanna say, late 70s, early 80s. The city spent a fair amount of money in legal fees attempting to get a property owner to renovate their property. It was just, kind of slowly deteriorating, and I really don't remember when the city said, if the court is just going to force an owner to secure their premises, if you can't force a full renovation, rehabilitation, how much legal battle do we want to place on that? So I think, kind of the question is, and it's not like the city council's got to take action, is the public should understand that that's not like, if somebody says, what's a little bit unfortunate is like that we know the buildings we're talking about. Here's this building sitting there, just dying a slow death, all right? And I don't see any hope for it whatsoever, and we just watch it continue to die. And we could, involve the city attorney and then get involved with this, all right? And I can just telling you, you're gonna spend a lot of money, and you may not like where you end, all right? You may end in just simply an order that secures the hazardous structure. Nobody's living, nobody's living there. So, it's your call. I'm trying to avoid some frustration that you might end up having by giving you information that you might not want to hear.
Nothing further. I just needed edification as to whether or not we had recourse, and I understand what Mel's saying.
Unfortunately, it sounds that, no, we don't, and we don't have a deep pocket to pursue this, unfortunately, because one of the buildings that you're thinking about is, it has a lot of history behind it, and it really would be nice to do the building justice and renovate it and put it to use. The owner of that property has good intent, but I don't believe they have sufficient funds to make that happen. So,
Thank you.
any other discussion? If not, sandwich boards. An update from Rennie is the sandwich board portion, first off, I should ask, one of the things he is still wondering and would like, needs the guidance of the council, do you want to make it a policy of which you could modify it more readily? Or do you want to have it an ordinance? So he's looking for guidance on where that's going to go.
So my guidance is to make it a policy and not have it be enforcement. I don't see it as something we're gonna run around and give people who leave their garage sale sign up too long. I don't see us writing a ticket to anybody for their garage sale sign, but I would like a clear policy that sets forth the expectation for what goes on within our city right away as it relates to signs, all right?
Okay.
Because I'm ready to start picking them up, putting them in my trunk again, because that's what I do, because it's a lot of.
Doing that now?
To some degree I did, because I took a little heat. I don't mind a little heat, but to be honest with you, I wasn't really sure that the city council was with me on this, all right? And that's okay, I get it. But I can tell you, I brought a lot of signs to the dumpster, and I still will pick up a sign. I'll pop a garage, when somebody has a garage sale on September 13th and I see that sign out there, I just pop that off and throw it in the back of my car and move on. So I'm still picking up some signs, but I'm not doing quite what I would do this whole town. I mean, really. And I've stopped it because really, I think that, and if the city, if I want to see this policy, because if the city council feels that it's fine for community suppers to allow signs and garage sales or whatever, well, it's, that's okay. Fine, I'll just go right to the golf course. I don't have to go around and do this every Saturday and Sunday morning. I can just go directly to the golf course, all right? But to me, it's
They're gonna shut
litter.
it down, they've started pulling the signs and everything.
Huh?
They've started pulling the signs.
Well, yeah. So anyway,
They
I'd
start
love
pulling
to
tops.
have I would love to see a policy. I don't think you need an ordinance. I think.
Can we have a show of hands of how many would want it to be a policy? I guess I don't have to, yes, young lady.
Question. I'm looking under Article 13, signs of
In
Vergennes
zoning, yeah.
and zoning.
Yep.
And there's a whole section, 1303 of prohibited signs. So I'm just wondering, since that's already there, isn't that a policy?
Well, one of the things is that whole section really deals with private property and not the city, what happens in a city right-of-way.
Because
So,
it says something about the ones that aren't, they have to be 5 feet away from
Those are
the
on
edge of
private
a
property,
public.
yeah.
I guess my concern, that's why one of the things I was wondering about is, I wasn't even thinking about garage sale signs because we take ours down the next day. But, and if you took any, it's fine, I'll make new ones. But is the sandwich signs on Main Street,
Yep.
in particular Basin Block,
Yep.
that really don't lend much to the ambiance of, our storefronts.
Agreed.
And I just don't think that they should be,
Yeah.
there should be another way for them to advertise what they are doing inside.
Right.
I think and this one says, if I want to put out one that says, today we're having a sale, it's
And that's
one
still
thing or something. But
Right.
to every day put out a sign that's not very attractive is
Yeah.
not beneficial to my storefront.
Well, one of the things relative to that section about sandwich board signs, when I was just so certain that the sandwich board sign exemption was only in the central business district. I was just so sure of that. And when I had my knees replaced 5 years ago, I missed a planning commission meeting, and somewhere along the way, and usually I'm paying closer attention, but they actually modified the whole sandwich board exemption, all right, so that you could have sandwich, it wasn't just in the central business district. So I asked the planning commission really to do a couple of things. One is to revisit this, and number one, consider having the planning commission and zoning regulations, and thus the DRB, to only deal with private property, and let the city council deal with the streets and what goes on in the city right of way. I just think it's a cleaner way to determine jurisdiction. And so I can tell you that the planning commission will be moving towards not policing sandwich board signs, particularly on public property. They may start regulating sandwich board signs on private property, but it'll be the city council that will decide what, if any, sandwich board signs can exist within the street right away. And that's what Rennie is working on, is some language, but would love to hear from.
We also have, there's rules about the actual signs.
Yeah,
And so there should be the same kinds of rules for the sandwich boards. For instance, not to name names, but like John and Mona's shop, they have a new sign.
Yeah.
And it's lovely. I mean, it's 100 times better than some handwritten thing, but they took into consideration that it kind of reflects back to their place. But if you have a chalkboard out, well, not even a chalkboard, but like a dry erase with sloppy writing, and it doesn't do anything for, you know, the buildings or the other signs, there's no coordination there. That there ought to be a law.
All right, the consensus is policy. I will get with Rennie on that. And he has got the sandwich boards portion written. It's all ready to come to the council. The temporary signs is partly written, but he was waiting for this final direction as to policy versus ordinance. So I will give that to, I'll get with him tomorrow. Kevin?
I have a question, how do you enforce policy? Like, who actually does it? Is it Mel? And then if someone keeps doing it, what's the ramifications?
If the city council adopted a policy, you know, I would just go up and pick them up, put them in the back of my trunk. I'm not writing letters to anybody, all right? You know, that was one of the things where somebody criticized me because I didn't contact him. It's like, you didn't contact me when you stuck it in the ground, but I owed you a phone call? I don't think so. So anyway, you know, I don't want to prejudge this policy, but if it's a policy, you don't have, there's no ticket. There's no formal enforcement. If it's allowed, it's allowed, depending on how this thing is written. If it's allowed, it's allowed, all right? And if it's not, it goes in my trunk. It's pretty simple.
So, I don't know if he'll be done, and if you want to get this sooner than later, but it hopefully will be done at least by the next council meeting. So,
Pretty soon the ground will be frozen, you can't stick them in anyway, so.
oh, yeah, you can. That's why they have crowbars, you can punch holes. Okay, so, thank you. We're gonna go to an added item, item number G, establishing a stream gauging station on Otter Creek at Vergennes. Mel?
So, as you see here, Richard actually sent me an email on Friday, and I wasn't working, all right? And so he followed up with me, and so I've given you a cover memo from Richard. A second page is what this thing looks like. I wish I had something to scale, but I get the feeling that's about the 6-7 feet. I wish I knew. The third attachment that you have is, if you notice in the middle of this where it says Station 003 in the middle, that is where they want to do the measurements of the river. And also, this piece of equipment can't be within the floodplain, and the floodplain elevation is 104, and which is really a little bit up on the back of your brother's garage, elevation 104. I think it creeps up there. So this piece of equipment that you see here would need to go, I want to say, at least halfway from the river to McDonough Drive. All right. Now, what they haven't determined is whether or not this would be on city property or on Matt Daniels' property, and I haven't talked to Matt about this at all.
But he does have a copy of the email.
He does.
I sent him a copy of the email
Okay.
and just let him know that.
So what I'm looking for is some reaction from the board. I mean, obviously, this is some electronic equipment so that they can better keep track of the elevation of the river and predict flood and this type of thing. You know, it's solar operated. I think I don't have any objections to the thing, but,
Is that the only purpose?
yeah, as far as I know.
Are they providing?
You think you're gonna do speed control or something, Lynn, maybe?
No, I just didn't know, maybe overflow.
Does the city get money like you do when you put a cell tower on the water tower?
They did not say anything about money.
Or will Matt get money if it's put on his project?
Yeah.
Huh?
Or will Matt get money if it's put on his project?
Has to do with the federal government? Probably not.
Yeah.
They're providing the unit, correct?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's solar, so it's not like gonna use electricity, you know, it's you know, they're looking for a site, all right?
And why there and not?
Why not 002, where we wouldn't have any question
Or
about it?
000, where it's our property?
Well, isn't it our property 002 as well?
Yes, it is.
But it's-
All the way down to almost 3.
Right.
You know, it does need to be serviced from time to time. There is somebody that's gonna come to it, and so therefore, obviously, you know, I really don't know. That's what he said on the phone, is that location 3 is their preferred site. That's what he said.
And it's preferred. So, there's nothing that council really needs to do, right?
Well, you can, if you can ponder this, I need to let him know. He's, as indicated in his,
What's his drop dead date?
well, I can tell you, when I first asked him, I said, listen, the council meets tonight, and they don't meet again until the 14th. Can it wait until the 14th? And he said he would prefer not, because he's trying to move forward with procuring this equipment, and so he needs to, have a home for it.
In the interest of science and, in prevention of flooding, or not, you can't really prevent flooding, but I think it's always a good thing it has to do recording history.
I don't have a problem with it, except that he wants to put it on a private property.
Who does?
Isn't that what it
003, then it's not really our question. It would be,
And-
your
and-
brother would be the
No,
one saying
no.
yes.
003 is probably still on our
Preferred.
property.
Okay.
It's right on the border.
But then I have no problem with it. If it's on the property, I have no problem with it. But that's my only concern.
Yeah.
I think if it's not our property, then this isn't our
But-
conversation.
But it's gonna come back far enough, and if it comes back far enough in line with that 003, it's gonna be out in part of his lawn. It's not, either that or in the drive, on the very edge of the driveway.
I'm sorry, that's his preference, is 003?
That's what he said.
Preference.
I would prefer that it not be a 003. Just aesthetically, right at the end of the dock, doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
It will not be at the end of the dock. It's gonna be way away from, because it has to be.
How far back?
Needs to be
I'm gonna
past the
say,
floodline.
let's say that the distance from the dock to the road is 100 feet, and I don't think I'm far off, all
Yep.
right? It's gonna be 60 feet away from the river.
Okay.
Because it has to be entirely out of the floodplain.
And if that's the case, it's gonna be on that embankment, or he's got,
Even with his house.
I think it's gonna be back towards his,
Garage.
back in his garage.
yeah,
So I hear
or in the
you.
middle of his driveway, that side driveway.
Like, for instance, I wouldn't want it at 002. I
Right.
wouldn't want it out in the middle of this park.
It can't be on the basin side, the sewer
Your-
plant side?
Your flood, that's not, doesn't make 104, right?
Can't get above the
You
floodplain.
can't, I don't think we have an elevation unless we put it on one of those knolls over there by the
What's that?
fence. If you
Oh,
put
to
it on
get out of the
false part,
floodplain?
if
No,
you
yeah, I
put it
can't
on
get
this
out of
side.
it. Yeah, I
You
can't get out of it.
floodplain.
All right, all right.
Kevin?
Is it possible to stipulate that the improvable down the future? You gotta do some recreational trails or something that's in the way?
Well, one of the things I said, listen, is there some kind of an easement? Is there some document or whatever? He said, yes. I said, well, can you send me this document? Is there a document? He said, yes. I said, how many pages is this frickin' thing? He says, it's only 2. I said, okay, all right. So I don't have the document, all right? So if I had, I would have shared it with you. So I guess what I'd like to be able to do is to at least communicate with him that there's, that there isn't any objection. However, this is not permission until you've actually seen, this easement. Because I don't know what it says, Kevin, if it's a 5-year easement, 1 year, 6 year, I have no idea. I don't have it.
Got Mel
I
deal
don't
with
have my
it?
phone.
Got Mel deal with it?
Yep.
Mel, it's in your hands,
Okay, all
all
right?
right?
Okay.
And if Matt gets involved, then, if I'm turning red, my niacin is just kicking in.
Okay.
Yeah, niacin. It's weird. Okay, so, G, so we'll go right down to, item number 6, city manager's report. Mel?
So I actually did a line-by-line review of the budget, and first off, just so you know, we are somewhere between 30% and 35% of the end of the year. And so, anything, I will tell you that our insurances, workers' compensation, property insurance, we have already paid 2 installments, so those should be in the vicinity of 50%. Don't let that alarm you when you see 50%, only a third of the way into the year. All of the rest of the things, they really should be in the 30% range, 30 to 33%, and they do appear to be pretty good. So I don't have any, there's any red flags in this thing at this point.
Anybody got any questions of Mel on the budget? That's great.
Capital improvements and special funds, I'm just sharing that information with you. I don't really have any, we really haven't had a lot of activity from those funds, so that's just information for you.
Again, questions on Mel? None? Okay, Mel?
And I put 6C under my manager report, only because there's not a city treasurer's report. But
We can make one.
a week or so ago, we pulled the trigger on this thing, right, Joan? And Joan was the first person, just so you know what we did, because I wanted to test this thing. And so Joan was trying to talk somebody into paying some of their delinquent taxes or something with a credit card, and it just didn't work. So anyway, so I said to Joan, Joan, here's the deal, all right? Take out your credit card, all right, or debit card, and pay your sewer bill, and the city will refund you $3.18. And so what Joan did is she acted as if she was paying her sewer bill online, as if she was at home. Filled out all this information at home through PayGov, all right, and paid her sewer bill. But she did it on a Thursday or a Friday, all right, because one of the things we really wanted to get a really good handle on was, when do we get our money?
I did
all
it
right?
on a Wednesday.
She did it on Wednesday. So Joan did it as if she did it at home. And then on Monday, I paid my sewer bill using the swiper, all right? So I took my debit card or credit card and ran a swipe and was able to monitor, so that we could get emails we would get an email from PayGov. We wanted to see what is our customers gonna get, all right? And how's the cash flow and everything gonna work? So we're all set, our sewer bills are paid, all right? It worked fine.
Yeah.
It's okay. There is a delay in us getting the money, just like we expected. We're, at this point, the way that Joan is handling it is when you pay by credit card, she doesn't credit your account until we actually have the money, all right? And so that's how we're doing it currently. In part, the reason why she's doing it that way is I'm the one that has to reconcile the checking account. And so money kind of flying into our account can be a little problematic with our financial software. So we feel pretty good about where we're at right now. And I think we should not report to you any more about this for 3 months. And we're gonna give it we're gonna give it a try and see. I can tell you that it's all about processing. I mean, we need to be able to collect money quickly, all right? And we're gonna see, I think the swipe, people at home that gotta go through and do their thing, it's a little bit time consuming at home. When you pay a bill online, it takes some time. That's their time, and it's not like I don't care about their time, but I really care about our time. So we think that this swipe and hold, and then when it gets paid, then Joan can use her scanner to beep a sewer bill if it's a sewer bill, but she really thinks that the use will really primarily be
Marriages.
Yeah, marriages and hunting licenses and things of that
Travelers.
nature. So again, in 3 months, we'll report back on that, okay? McDonough Drive Pump Station, even though we decided not to go after funding through the municipal planning grant because we needed the agency approval, I actually have been in touch with the Natural Resources Agency, and there is a program where we can get 50% match. It's through what's called a loan forgiveness program. And they are very open to funding that study as being part of a bigger picture. I think that's the right avenue, all right? So we will move forward in that regard. Obviously, I think that there is a 50% match, and so I'll have to, we may end up, I'll certainly let you know how the finances work and whether or not there's action from the city council relative to money from the sewer capital improvement fund. But anyway, I just want to let you know that all is not lost from this idea of doing a study of that weak link. All right? Mahawi LLC, I haven't brought this to, and Matt, you probably wanted to say something.
Associated with the Mahawi property, yes, thank
okay.
you, Mel, thank you.
I hadn't reported on this for quite some time, and this involves the Mahawi property, which is the Norton Grist Mill and Horse Barn, whereby Mahawi applied for a permit to put 2 living units in the horse barn and to eliminate the office space in the upper floors of the grist mill and replace those with residential units, there would be, in the end of this project, there would be 7 residential units in the grist mill building and 2 residential units in the horse barn for a total of 9 units. The application that came in offered up 2 options to the DRB relative to fencing, and the DRB, through condition, selected option B, and so the permit was granted, but Mahawi appealed the decision relative to claiming that the DRB did not have the authority to condition an option that was provided by the applicant. Now, the DRB was the decision was affirmed by the judge, but Mahawi has since followed with reconsideration appeals, which were granted, and then another appeal has been a follow-up appeal to appealing other issues. So the point I'm getting at is I printed off what we've spent on this to date. I think it's around $8,700. And I can tell you, I don't want to say that we're halfway through, but I really thought that because we are an on-the-record community, that, you know, you just get a transcript of the tape and the judge rules, and that's not the case. This seems a lot, it is on the record, but it seems like a lot of briefs and responses and this type of thing, and so you're not done seeing seeing these bills, and I'll keep you posted. I will tell you that the DRB stands behind their decision, and really feels that the circumstances surrounding this property, with 9 residential units being on that island, with a 37-foot fall very close by, that there needs to be protection, and the battle, if you will, between Mahawi and the DRB's decision is whether or not the DRB had the authority to require that safety fencing. So I can tell you that the DRB is not going to walk away from their decision. They think that safety fencing is required and should be built, and any new units won't be occupied without a certificate of occupancy, and I wouldn't grant one until the fencing is in place, unless the judge rules that that they did not have that authority, and then you would end up with not, in the eyes of the DRB, sufficient fencing. So that's that one.
And
Other topics of interest, what the hell's, oh, yeah, Front Porch Forum. Yeah, there was a post on Front Porch Forum kind of claiming that we weren't doing things properly, in that, people's state payment check was coming to the city, and we were keeping that money and spreading it out over 4 payments, and that isn't, and that's not right, and whatever. You read the first post and then a follow-up post, and Joan and I talked about this for a little while, and I actually wrote to both of the folks and explained to them really how it all works, and that really they were on the assumption that we get a check, and we actually don't get a check. So let's say that the gross billing is $4.5 million. Let's just say that it is $4.5 million, and let's say that the state payment adjustments is $750,000. We don't get a check for $750,000. What we do is we credit people's accounts $750,000. That's what we do. And then when we pay the schools, when the Department of Ed reports to us what we have to pay the schools, that $750,000 that we don't collect from the state, we don't pay to the school, okay? So there is no money that comes here that we're keeping in our little sacks and keeping it away from people. It's a credit. That's all it is a credit. And Joan and I really feel, I will tell you that in our software, you could check a box that says, put the state payment adjustment on the front end. So let's say if somebody had a $3,000, let's say they had a $4,000 property tax bill with a $2,400 state payment adjustment, all right? So that their net is $1,600, and the way we do it now is they get a bill that's $400, $400, $400, $400. And we're quite confident that people appreciate the way that we handle this. They have this bill that's been adjusted and spread out quarterly. If we went the other way and credited the full $2,400 on the front end, the city would receive no money so now their quarterly installments are $1,000, all right? So the $2,400 of which is a credit, it's not money, it's just a credit. For us to give us, if we were to credit it all on the front end, then that property taxpayer would pay us nothing in August. They would pay us nothing in November, and then they would have a balance of X in, $600 in February, and then they would owe us $1,000 at the end. And so really, they aren't paying their taxes quarterly. They're paying under something. So we really feel that because the voters in Vergennes have voted to collect taxes quarterly, that's what we do, all right? And now if we get flooded by people saying, no, we want our money or something, all right, you'd have a public vote and you'd go accordingly. But so I've explained it to both of those folks, and there's actually a post that's coming out tomorrow to explain a little bit about how this works. We were pleased to see that Pam Kuzina, who is a Vergennes resident, that is the assistant town clerk in Ferrisburg, let folks know, really how it works as well. So anyway, should be all set. The other, my last other topic of interest is, this is a first for me. As you know, I'm the tree warden of Vergennes, and I received a request from the Bixby Library Board of Trustees because they want to cut down the 2 large spruce trees in the front of the library. And I kind of question myself whether or not an old spruce tree is a public shade tree, but I'm not going to debate that. I think it is. And so because the city owns the library property, even though it's managed by the Board of Trustees, it's still city-owned property. And so cutting a tree down on city property requires my approval, and in this instance, it requires a public hearing. So I'm having my first ever public hearing as tree warden. So notice is hereby given that there will be a public hearing on Monday, November 13, 2017, at 6:30 at the Bixby Memorial Free Library for the following purpose: to consider the request by the Bixby Memorial Free Library Board of Trustees that the 2 blue spruce trees that are in front of the building be allowed to be felled. The public hearing is called pursuant to 24 VSA 2509. So anybody, and I will tell you, I have posted this and mailed this to abutting property owners, and we'll see how this public hearing goes on the
If you're gonna fell some trees, like you need real lumberjacks. If you're gonna cut it down, you can do a chainsaw, but if you're gonna fell it.
fell. Well, the statute says felled, all right, so.
I have a question about the tree that was to the right when you walk up the stairs, the great big tree that all the kids climbed in.
Shrubs,
Oh, is it a shrub?
Shrub,
Because they took
yes.
it down.
yes. That was,
Very sad.
that was ruled a shrub and not a shade tree.
Huh.
Sorry to backtrack, I've just been thinking about this Maui appeal thing, and I'm just kind of curious. Mel, you said this could go on, and there could be some more bills coming. How do these costs get paid? Like, what fund, and how do they get approved, and do they have to get appropriated in advance? Are they not budgeted for it, because you can't budget for these kind of things? How does it work in terms
Well,
of?
we actually do budget. We have a line item in our administrative budget for attorney's fees, all right? And it's 4,000, 6,000, I don't know it's a number in our budget, all right? And it's an estimate, it's just a number that we carry in our budget, and it's never been regarded that if it's, say the line item is $6,000, we don't like give up when we run out of money, nor do we, if we got $3,000 left, go sue somebody, all right? So it's a line item in our budget.
Any other topics, Mel?
Nope.
Okay, well, as many of you know, Rennie is being appointed to the executive board on the Chamber of Commerce this evening. He'll be taking Amy's position on a joking fashion. He's not sure if he needs congratulations or a sympathy card, so I'm joking. On November 2nd, the Vermont Community Development Association and the Vermont Retail and Grocers Associations is holding a conference at the Opera House, and it's during the day, and I'm in hopes that some of the council members can attend that. I'm sure Rennie will be there, so. Pumpkins in the Park. This Saturday night, people can start dropping off their pumpkins at 5:30. You can get your form online, registration form, or at the city park, starting 5:30, and judges will be starting at 6:30. We'll do the lighting at 6:30, and hopefully everybody will go over and see the people at the nursing home. There's got a bunch of activities going on over there. Wizard, I understand there's going to be a wizard there. So, also, I have the honor of hosting the Mayor's Coalition meeting this Friday here in Vergennes. So I've invited Mel to attend that meeting to kind of see what's going on and how the agenda has changed slightly. But we'll know more about that. And the final item that I have is I was approached by an organization that has done this for a number of years about recognizing those that do extra effort and go that extra mile. So therefore, I have a proclamation of which I will read now. Whereas Vergennes, Vermont is a community which acknowledges that a special vibrancy exists within the entire community when its individuals, citizens collectively go the extra mile in personal efforts, volunteerism, and service. And whereas Vergennes, Vermont is a community which encourages its citizens to maximize their personal contribution to the community by giving of themselves wholeheartedly and with total effort, commitment, and conviction to their individual abundance, families, friends, and communities. And whereas Vergennes, Vermont is a community which chooses to shine a light on and celebrate individuals and organizations within the community who go the extra mile in order to make a difference and lift up fellow members of their community. And whereas Vergennes, Vermont acknowledge the mission of the Extra Mile America to create 575 plus extra mile cities in America and is proud to support Extra Mile Day, which is on November 1st, 2017. Now therefore, I, Mayor of Vergennes, Vermont, do hereby proclaim November 1st, 2017 to be Extra Mile Day. I urge each individual in their communities to take the time on that day to not only go the extra mile in his or her own life, but to acknowledge all those who are inspired in their efforts and commitment to make their organizations, families, communities, country, and our world a better place. Adopted this 24th day of October 2017. And now I will sign the proclamation. And that will be on file at the city. Any other items that anybody needs?
The pumpkin form is online at the city's website or the town's?
It's online at the partnership. Yeah, we're having some issues.
I just wanted to clarify.
No, thank you for bringing that up, because originally the word went out that it was online, but it's a long story. But websites.
There is a link on.
There is a link,
From Vergennes.org to the partnership right on our homepage.
yep, so,
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
and do I have a second it? And Matt?
Aye.
All those in favor say aye.
Yes.